There's been a lot of local news here tonight about the polling places and about the numbers coming in and people being allowed to vote or not allowed to vote. The Republicans voicing some concerns. They say that they think there has been some potential fraud here in St. Louis, in the city of St. Louis. You'll recall that they kept the polls open a little bit late tonight because a judge earlier in the day, a state judge, ruled in favor of the Democrats, who had argued that they needed a little more time because some of their folks hadn't been able to vote. There's been a lot of back and forth today about whether there were any irregularities. I would expect that we might hear more about this tomorrow. Jeff?
Kate, are the Carnahan people banking on the fact that when this woman goes to Washington, Senate Republicans have already indicated the obvious, that they control the rules and the seating in the Senate? Are the Democrats and the Carnahan supporters banking on the fact that who is going to throw a widow out of the Senate seat? Who's going to refuse to seat this woman?
I'm sorry, I can't hear the last part of your question.
Are the Carnahan supporters banking on the fact that it's unlikely the Republicans would want to take on all the public relations heat if they would not let this woman take this seat?
Simply can't.
Well, we'll call timeout, and we'll call timeout, and thank you in that cheering ballroom. Judy?
All right, we've, as Bernie said, we've called Missouri for the late Governor Carnahan, and as Bernie's been pointing out, and as Kate's been discussing, it is his widow who has said that she will accept a seat if appointed. Let's go over to our balance of power area to Wolf Blitzer for some examination of this and some other Senate, House, and governor's races. Wolf.
Judy, with the call for the late Mel Carnahan to be the winner in Missouri, let's take a look at the balance of power in the Senate as it now stands. Coming into this evening, there were 35 Republican holdovers, 31 Democratic holdovers. The Republicans so far tonight have won 14 Senate seats. The Democrats have won 17 seats. That brings the new number of Republicans with 49 seats. The Democrats now have 48 seats. There are still three undecided seats that we'll talk about in a moment. But only a little while ago, before this call by CNN in favor of Mel Carnahan, Mrs. Jean Carnahan did speak out. She had some emotional words on a speakerphone. I want you to listen to what she had to say a little while ago.
Lincoln never saw his nation made whole again. Susan B. Anthony never cast a vote. Martin Luther King Jr. never finished his mountaintop journey. My husband's journey was stopped short, too. And for reasons we don't understand, the mantle has now fallen upon us. We remain heirs of a legacy, bearers of the dream. On this night, I pledge to you, rather, let us pledge to each other, we will never let the fire go out. God bless you always. Thank you.
This is Jean Carnahan, the widow of Mel Carnahan, speaking out a little while ago. Let's go back to the national desk and Bernard Shaw.
Thank you, Wolf, because we're making a call in Iowa, in the Hawkeye state. CNN declares that Al Gore has won Iowa's 7 electoral votes. When we last reported, this was how the electoral map looked, but now if you add Iowa's 7, Mr. Gore now has gone back on top. The vice president, 249 electoral votes to Governor Bush's 246.
And we can now say with absolute certainty, I believe, that unless one of these states that we've called changes, whoever wins Florida will be the next president of the United States.
That's right.
And the states still outstanding: Florida, 25 electoral votes. Here you see it. Oregon, 7 electoral votes. And the Badger State, Wisconsin, 11 electoral votes.
But
it's that close in this country.
But the key here is Oregon and Wisconsin, no offense to those good people, are now irrelevant. The only way either George Bush or Al Gore gets to be president is to win Florida, and Florida looks like it is going down to the very thinnest of wires. This thing literally could not be any closer. Florida is the ballgame.
And we are told it's South Florida, Dade, and Broward counties where the vote is yet to be counted.
Yep.
Well, I suppose it could be closer if the states had fallen a different way and we were facing a tie, 269 to 269. But that's not what's happened.
National raw vote
Here is a look at, with 85% of the precincts reporting across the nation, look at how close this election is. 49% George Bush, Al Gore 48%. What is that? Who's good at math? That's about 600,000.
It's a 603,000 vote plurality for Bush out of 85.83 million votes cast. Humphrey and Nixon were a shade closer, although we don't know that this could close. Kennedy,
does anybody have a calculator? Can they tell us what that is? We still have 15% of the precincts.
It's way under 1% of the vote.
It's way under 1%, yeah.
But slowly it's changing, and who knows in the coming minutes.
Not quite as close as Kennedy and Nixon, but it's still very, very close.
I want to ask, one of the states we're waiting for is Oregon. Bill, we've been saying all night that Oregon's the one state in the country where they're mailing in the ballots, in some cases delivering them today. How long before we know about Oregon? It's a different counting thing there.
Well, it is supposed to count pretty quickly, but apparently the vote is very close there. And I mean, they haven't ever had, I think, a presidential election with an all-mail-in ballot. They're supposed to count the ballots as soon as the polls close, so to speak, today. They were supposed to go right away. So we should have a result from Oregon pretty soon. Washington is the state that's supposed to be slow, and we've already called Washington.
And we've already called that. Oregon, as we mentioned, Wisconsin. We've been looking at these state-by-state numbers throughout the night. They are very close. They reflect the closeness in the presidential.
But as I say,
contest.
they move
Florida.
off center stage now, and we are now, since Judy Woodruff is one of the leading experts on the nicknames, I think I know this one. Is it the Sunshine State, Miss Woodruff?
It is.
Well, the sun's going to shine on either Al Gore or George W. Bush, maybe even in the middle of the night, because whoever gets that gets...
That's a good way to put it.
Gets the whole enchilada.
And you know what? When they figure out Florida, there's going to be an argument over who did it. Was it Joe Lieberman or was it Elian Gonzalez who carried Florida?
Oh, boy.
Could be either way.
There was we all remember the time right after the Elian Gonzalez saga when Florida was just written off for Al Gore.
That's right. Everyone assumed
the political consensus was no way.
That's right.
He might as well give up. There's no chance.
Because the Cuban American vote was going to go solidly Republican as it used to be. But from the exit poll we just showed you, that doesn't seem to be happening. The Jewish vote appears to be about as democratic as it's always been, and in about the same proportions as it's always been.
And just for the record, I mean, it is 2 o'clock in the morning, and we should just put this on the table again. If the popular vote keeps holding up, with a narrow, very narrow plurality for Governor Bush, it is now at about 600,000 votes out of 85.8 million votes cast, and Al Gore wins Florida, Al Gore is the President of the United States, having lost the popular vote. That is a very much a live possibility.
We have a voice we haven't heard from yet this evening. He's Robert George. He's a political analyst joining us from New York. Robert, you've been listening to our pontificating and our analyzing. Please bring us a fresh perspective on all this.
Well, you know, it's good to be in the city that never sleeps, covering the election that never sleeps. So I think actually, Judy, you mentioned the name that hadn't been mentioned much, and it's Elian Gonzalez, because while initially Florida was kind of written off because of the Elian Gonzalez affair, it's still possible that there could have been some swing Cuban voters that may have gravitated closer to Bill Clinton in 1996 when he won the state, that may have gone Republican, and that's part of the section of Florida that we're looking at results coming in.
We have been talking tonight, Robert, about the Cuban Americans, second and third generation Cuban Americans, not as Republican as their elders. Also the fact that much of the Hispanic vote in the state of Florida is no longer, can we assume it's all Cuban or mostly Cuban. There are more and more Hispanics in Florida who have come from different parts of Central America, South America.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, in fact, my mother actually lives just outside of Dade County, and you're right. It's a mixture of a lot of Caribbean Hispanics, not just the Dominican Republic and so forth, plus West Indians in there as well. You've got an interesting mix of different ethnicities, and it's really hard to say whether they're going to be going Republican or going Democrat. Democrat, and Florida is the whole marbles basically come down to Florida.
Well, wouldn't it be